Hello. In all of my hobbies, I've tended to make videos on how to, whether it was restoring Mustangs or working on amplifiers, turntables, whatever it is. With the model trains and scale trains, I haven't done that, but I see a lot of questions about doing lighting. And some people feel like it's rocket science, and it's not. It really isn't that hard. So I decided to make a video to show that it's not that hard, not that rocket science, and make it easy for you folks and actually do the work and show. Okay, so the goal here is to make life easy for you in this. And I first want to state I have no affiliation with any of the products I'm showing you. They're just what I use. I'll put links in the description to where you can find them. And as I said, it just happens to be what I use. If you use something else, fine. It's just basically a how-to. So the way I started was with the Just Plug system. And you see here two different items. One is the light hub. And you can buy the light hub and you get the power supply, which comes in. It's basically a wall wart and a connector. And it will control 4 lights. If all you want is 4 lights, that's all you need. But you say, well, maybe I want more than 4 lights. Well, then you get this thing called an expansion hub. And how does the expansion hub work? Basically, the power now comes into the expansion hub, and you put a connector from the hub, you have 4 of them, to a light hub, and you can do up to 4 light hubs have. Now you've got 16 lights. What if you want more than 16 lights? You do more than one expansion hub, which the expansion hub goes to another expansion hub, and you could have 16, 32, whatever, mode you want. Woodland Scenics puts out great videos on how to hook this up. And a lot of their building products come with a built-in light and a connector. So why do I have this other stuff here? Well, a couple reasons. One, obviously my buildings don't all have, they're not Woodland Scenics, and I want to be able to do my own LEDs. If you go exclusively with Woodland Scenics, their 2 light sets are kind of pricey, and their connectors don't always reach where you need. They're they might be 48 inches, but if you're 60 inches away, you're out of luck. And this process is going to show you how to address those things. So first, I just want to go over what we have here. Obviously, we have the expansion hub and the light hub. And the key is to get your LED connected to the light hub. And they have dimmers. You can adjust them. So first of all, you need some LEDs. And I get this package from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. But you also need to be able to connect those to the light hub. So again, on Amazon, you can get these Molex connectors, which are the same as the Woodland Scenics connectors, basically to go in, and you need to connect those. And they come in a big package. Actually, they come with a male and female. You just need the male ends for that, or whatever you're going to do. You will need some wire, and the wire should be 30 gauge wire. So this is the 30 gauge wire. It's really small. I'm telling you, it is really small. But why 30 gauge? The connectors look more like 26 gauge or maybe even a little bigger. But the wires for the LEDs, that's pretty much 30 gauge. Same thing with the Woodland Scenics connectors. I'll show you what they look like. They might be 26 gauge also. This is one that I've cut off. So if you want to use 26 gauge, you can. Here's 26 gauge wire, little thicker. But you're still going to have to deal with the fiddly part of the LEDs, which, trust me, they are 30 gauge. And your typical stripper does not go up to 30 gauge if you have one like this. So I did have to get a one that would go to 30 gauge. Okay, so let's get right into it. What do you need to do? Well, the first thing you need to do is measure out what length of wire you need from the house or whatever it is you're going to connect it to this controller wherever you have it mounted. So for example, if you have these controllers mounted on a control panel and your building that you want to light is way across the thing, you don't need Woodland Scenics extensions or anything like that. You're going to make your own wire. And just to know, for polarity, make your red the positive, the black your negative. And if you look closely, and hopefully this will show up on the camera, each of these has marked a polarity, a plus and a minus. Right hand side, always plus. So you want to keep that red to the plus. Okay, so you got your parts. So let's take an example of how much wire you need. Okay, so I've measured on my layout for the building and to the where my connectors are, and I'm going to cut the equal length wires. Real easy. And I'm going to strip the ends. Give yourself a good sufficient end and strip it. And you'll see how tiny that wire is. And take the other one and 30 gauge and strip it. Don't clamp down hard, just connect with it. If you've got big hands, this might be a problem for you. And see, I'm just catching it. Whoop, see, I was even too hard with that one. That will happen. Stripped. Stripped. Now these are really hard to twist. I can tell you that right now. So you want to get a good connection. So let's start with the plus side on this, and we'll have to strip a little wire on the LED side. Okay. And what I tend to do in preparation for soldering these, if I can even pick up the wire, is I do the X and I get them wrapped around each other, which is really hard. They don't like to twist like thicker gauge wire, but you can get it done. And that one didn't. So let's try that again. Let's wrap it around. And then I'm going to show you something else you need to do before you solder, before you make your final connections. Okay, I was able to get this wrapped around sufficiently. Okay, so now hopefully your soldering iron is heated up. And one of the things I do to help, you can use different helping hands. I'm not going to teach you how to solder. I'm going to show you how I solder this. I use a roll of electrical tape. Oh, I forgot something very important. Shrink tubing. You want to make sure you put shrink tubing on your line in preparation for, after you've soldered it, you want to be able to cover the solder spot. Now, this one I believe is the right one for 30 gauge. And I'm going to slide it over, if I can see it. There we go. Slide it over. And it's there ready for after I solder that. Okay, so you see I've put it on a roll of electrical tape, and that's just to hold it up in the air a little bit so that I can easily solder this. And I'm going to tell you, you want to use flux. Okay, you don't need gobs of it. It prevents oxidation and Gives you nice, clean solder spots, solder joints. You just need, man, it's a lot. Just need to wet it with the solder a bit. I don't want to have gobs of it on there. Just, it's really hard with 30 gauge. There we go. We've got enough on there. Just enough. And what you're going to do is take your solder, and if you don't have to have the whole roll in your hand, you can just cut off a piece because you're going to use such a minuscule amount. Okay. And you're going to take your soldering iron, and you're going to make sure your tip is nice and clean. And all you're going to do is put the soldering iron, whoop, I touched the wire, is put the soldering iron under the wire and just tin the wire. See that? Look. So you've done that. Give it a few seconds, blow on it, whatever you want to do. You can get the extra. But see, you got a nice firm connection there. And now, over that connection, and I could have really cut this in half. I didn't need the whole thing, but I'm just showing you. Bring this over. And you're going to want to do this on all ends. Bring this over the spot, pull it through. Got a little blob there that make it a little harder. There we go. And over there. And you can use a heat gun to shrink it. Or, conversely, just take a lighter and hold it down till you see the tube shrink. Okay? It's not rocket science, it's just to make it hold in place. Okay, you're done. And I could make that a little tighter. Just hold it, and you see it shrinks down over the wire. And now you've got something protecting that. All right, so you did the positive side. Wonderful. Let's do the negative side. Do the negative side. Strip this wire. Okay. Take your black wire that you've stripped already and do the same thing. I'm going to make my little X and get one wrapped over the other. And back and forth. Doesn't matter if it overhangs. There's only about 3 strands per wire here. It's really kind of funky. Okay, so we got that. Let's not forget our shrink tubing. I'm going to cut that smaller. I don't need a huge amount for that. And always remember to put it on the wire first. If you forget, now you're resorting to electrical tape, which is not really great. Okay, that's raring to go. Let's get this on my little handy holder here. As I said, it just holds it in place for me. Get a little bit of flux on there. There, more than enough. Make sure your solder tip is nice and clean. Get your solder. You notice I have a bent tip. It's purposely like that. It makes it easier for me to do this. Done. They're connected. Okay. So now we're going to take our shrink tube, put it over. And I've been having a little problem with this shrink tube. I don't think this one shrinks as much as some other brands I use, but that's okay. This is my lighter. It works. Just keeps it from being exposed. And you see it shrinking. Do not melt your shrink tube or your wires. You know, be aware of what you're doing. There you go. Good enough. You can see that it's pinched the connection. Okay. So now you have your length. Say, well, wait a minute now. How are you going to connect it to the Just Plug? Well, that's where the Molex cable comes in. So before we put the Molex cable in, we want to make sure that our shrink tube is on there, because if you don't, and you do you won't be able to get it on afterwards. So take a little piece of shrink tube, get it. It's not going to work too well if it's all scattered like that. Ugh. So fiddly, 30 gauge. There we go. So I got that one on the plus. Get this one on the minus. There, it's out of the way. Now, we're going to do the same exact thing with the Molex cable that we did with the LED, and that's to solder the wires together. So let me grab the Molex cable. Now with the Molex cable, you want to make sure you grab the male. The male looks like this, female looks like that. You don't want the female, you want the male. So you're going to strip these just like you did. You can use the 30 gauge or the 28 gauge stripper just to get yourself some exposed wire. Like I said, I think this is a little thicker, and they have tinned ends, but that doesn't matter. Okay, remember what I said, plus to plus. Plus, red, red. So I'm gonna twist that around. Oop, guess what I did? I did not put the shrink wrap on first. Oh, yes, I did. Sometimes you forget what I do. But that was a good scare for everybody to say, hey, did you remember that? And let's see if I've got a good enough. Oh, yeah, nice connection there. So I've got a nice connection. I'm laying it in my handy holder. Get my little bit of flux. I use paste flux. There is liquid flux that comes in like a syringe. And I've used that for electronics, but you know, I do like the paste flux the best. Get my little piece of solder. Get myself in position because my soldering iron's twisted. And we're just gonna touch that. You see the solder melt. I mean the flux. And come on, get on there. There you go. And we tin the wire. Get a little more on there. It's good. So that one's done. Since I already have the shrink tubing on the negative side, I'll just go ahead and do that, and then we'll shrink both of them. So again, I do a little X, get them wrapped around. It's not how I would normally do wires, but because it's so small, it seems to be effective. And you want it small because otherwise you'll never get the shrink tube over it if there's anything really jutting out. Not without pulling and such. A little flux. Way too much flux. All right, that'll do. Get your solder. Make sure your tip is clean and shiny, and get it on under the wire. And you can see the solder on the wire. A little flux there. There we go. Almost home, folks. Okay, take your shrink tubing. And by the way, these connections are good. Look, little tug on them. Little tug on them. You know, you don't want to yank on them, but my God, it's good enough for what the purpose is here. You are dealing with small gauge. Okay, yeah, it's a little tough getting it over there. I can pull on it a little bit. Get it over. Shrink that one up. Okay, that's done. Now let's do the other one. It's on there. Yes, we are on the home stretch, I promise. This shrink tube is probably, oh, no, it worked okay. It's good that it's tight because you don't want exposed wires. I was having trouble on this end here, but that's okay. Close enough. It's going to shrink around the... There we go. Done. Okay. So guess what? You have your cable. And now you're going to set it in a house. And we're actually going to show you that. So in this particular building, I'm actually going to use 2 LEDs. It just works out better that way. And I probably should have said this before. You can hook 2 LEDs to this same single cable. It's not going to be a problem. You wouldn't want to hook up 10 or 20 or whatever, but 2 would be fine. I didn't do that in this case, and I forgot that I had already, prepared this. So I'm not going to actually glue this one in as I would in the top. I'm just going to put it in with some tape. See, normally what I would do is I would put just a single drop of crazy glue Loctite on there and then set it where I wanted it in the building. I'd know ahead of time where I wanted it. For now, because this is just demo purposes, I'm just going to put some tape for the building. And you'll probably see in a minute why I would use 2 LEDs in this building versus 1. Just putting it in the top there somewhere. And I've got my connections. So now, pretending that I drilled a hole in the table and ran the line over to the thing. And by the way, drill your hole for the connector. If you really want to, and you want a smaller hole, you can drill it to the size of the wires, run the wires, but then you have to solder at the table, and that is a pain. This is not a huge hole. In comparison to what's under here, drill this, put it through, and now I'm going to show you how you connect it to the Woodland Scenics. Oh, it fell out of the building. Let's try that again. Now that I'm blinding the camera. And there you go. You have a lit scene. I can turn the light off here so you can see. In this particular building, I want 2 LEDs. It's a bookstore. I would put one closer to the front and one in the back. But hopefully you can see, and we have stuff in the windows to make it look cool. But that's it. I mean, that is your rocket science there that people think is so hard. And I can show you how the dimmer works. You can bring that all the way down to nothing, or a little brighter, very bright. So the combination of this and do it yourself works. And as I said, I now have enough length, cut to my own length, that under the board, with this attached, I bring the connector down and over to this, and I've got control. All right, I hope this helped. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the comments. Hope you enjoy the video. So here are some of the buildings lit up. The movie theater and different ones. Some of these are Woodland Scenics, and ones like the soda shop did myself. You can control these, the brightness with the dimmer. You can see that one going down to nothing. Same thing with the restaurant. And then the store on the end. I don't have them in order. And I think that's the movie theater. have the general store, and then here's the soda shop. So yeah, it's not hard, and it really looks good. There's Molly's Diner all lit up, and we've got this store lit up. That's a Woodland Scenics, and I'm working my way through it. And yes, it's a wire's nest under the board, which I'm not going to show you, but hope it gives you some inspiration. Take care. I just glued them into the building, and you can see it looks really awesome. So, okay, great way to end the video.